I have no doubt that Daniel has discovered the documentation of exactly how this process works, magnetification, where they attach DNA to nano-sized particles of highly magnetized metal and can direct it to a specific spot within the body. In the documentation that he's found and goes over thoroughly, they use a cotton spore, which is what this is, a cotton seed, and the apertures within it, the little holes. And they explain how they take these nano-sized particles of metal, that's what this PEI is, a nano-sized particle of metal, and along these outer spikes, like barbed wire, they connect the DNA. It even goes so far as to tell you exactly how magnetized these little nanoparticles of metal are by giving the unit of measurement of magnetization. As you can see, it's very thorough of an explanation for the layman to be able to understand. Someone who is not in the area of research and development of this type of technology can understand how it works. It's thorough enough, but not too complex to understand. What he has found is the presentation by insiders within the industry who do the research and development and are very proud of the latest developments and applications that they've discovered for this process where they connect DNA to a magnetized piece of metal, a nanoparticle of metal, and inject it into the body. So there is no doubt he has discovered the proof. Couple days after he made this video, he made a testimonial video where he tells about how he ran into a guy at the gas station who got the jab, and he explained to him some stuff about magnetification. He said, "What? Really? Huh?" They walked out to the guy's truck, grabbed a piece of metal, and sure enough, sticks to the guy. I hadn't really looked into it. I'd heard plenty of rumors around the rumor mill, but the first time I Googled it was today. And I realize the only thing you'll find on YouTube is all the debunking stories because they've scrubbed all the other videos. And it looks hilarious. One after another mainstream debunking. No, this is not true. Well, where's all the people saying it is true? The only videos I see on here are the ones saying that it's not true. They're just trying to delay the realization a little longer. That's all they can do. And today, Fleur Brun put out a video where a guy takes a package of chicken, store-bought chicken breasts, puts a piece of metal up to it. Sure enough, he even wipes it off with a paper towel to show you there's no sticky residue like spray glue. He even takes the chicken out of the package and sticks the metal directly to the slimy, wet chicken. Okay? I'll include that link in the description. In Daniel's presentation, he says that he believes they have essentially turned each person who got the jab into a transceiver, a transmitter and receiver. That was the words Daniel used. You might recall hearing me use the term biobot transceiver, a couple hundred times. So in this video, I am going to lay out the two yous, the two parts of yourself, of which you're only familiar with one, and then I'm going to relate it to some direct, real experiences. My stepdad, who shot at me with a BB gun a few weeks ago, and then a couple days ago it came up, and I mentioned to him what happened right before he shot at me with that BB gun, and it's like he didn't even realize, like he was possessed. Like one half of him took action, and the other half was left holding the bag trying to explain why he just did what he did, or deny that he did anything. The guy who drove a truck at me the first week I was on this job let his emotional side act and then tries to explain it with his logical, rational side. So we're going to talk about that, and by the end of this video, it's going to raise a lot of questions that I don't have all the answers for, but I think I'll be able to make the presentation clearly enough that it will be pretty easily understood that there are two parts inside of you. Like the song Papercut by Linkin Park. Since they don't let me put any music on my videos, which is cool, because they let me get away with a lot of other stuff, I'm going to just give you the lyrics to that song Papercut. But I know just what it feels like to have a voice in the back of my head. Like a face that I hold inside, face that awakes when I close my eyes, face that watches every time I lie, face that laughs every time I fall, it watches everything. So I know when it's time to sink or swim, the face inside is hearing me right beneath my skin. It's about those two voices inside of you that most people are unfamiliar even exist. This link will be in the description.
Your brain is two brains, two hemispheres, each doing half the work of being you. Half your vision goes to each and half your movement directed by each. Right controls left and left controls right. Your two brains coordinate through a wire of nerves, but this wire can be cut and was, for a time, used as an epilepsy treatment. After the cut, people seemed the same, though their brain was split in twain. Except some post-split patients describe that while selecting their morning outfit with right hand, left might come along to disagree. Actually, left hand might quite often disagree, which these split brain patients found frustrating. What's happening? To investigate, remember, right brain sees and controls one half, while left brain controls and sees the other. But only left brain can speak. Hello. Because that's where the speech center is located. Right brain without this is mute. In normal brains, this doesn't matter because each half communicates across the wire with the other. But split brains can't, and thus you can show just the right brain a word, ask the person, what did you see, and you'll hear nothing. Because left speaking brain saw nothing. Meanwhile, right brain will use its hand to pick the object out of a pile hidden from left brain. This is deeply creepy. Ask why are you holding the object, and speaking left brain will make up a plausible sounding but totally wrong reason.
Ask the guy who drove a truck at me in my first week here why you did that, and he will come up with seemingly logical, rational explanations to justify what he did, but there is no justification that he will find because he was not acting logically or rationally, he was acting emotionally. Likewise with my dad who shot at me with a BB gun. Likewise with Matt from Quantum of Conscience who just took a shot. And we're gonna get around to that. But this will be applicable to very many people and your life experience of those around you. That's where I'm looking to take this, is to be able to have these conversations at a higher level with those who understand what I'm talking about. So I'm not gonna pander to the lowest common denominator of understanding of those who don't know what I'm talking about. I'm gonna connect some bigger dots for those who do know what I'm talking about.
I always wanted to learn how to solve one of these. Left brain isn't lying, it's just doing what...
So the right brain made the person take action, and the left brain is holding the bag of responsibility, trying to explain what the person just did. Listen to that again.
What did you see, and you'll hear nothing. Because left speaking brain saw nothing. Meanwhile, right brain will use its hand to pick the object out of a pile hidden from left brain. This is deeply creepy. Ask why are you holding the object, and speaking left brain will make up a plausible sounding but totally wrong reason. I always wanted to learn how to solve one of these. Left brain isn't lying, it's just doing what brains do, creating a story that explains its past actions to its current self. A behavior which does rather cast doubt onto the notion of free will, but that's a story for another time. Creating reasons for why it does things is just something left brains do. It happens in normal, healthy humans all the time, and if you think about it closely, you know you've done this. Back to experiments. Give right brain an object, ask the person what's in your hand, and they won't be able to say. I'm not holding anything. And when asked to draw, a split brain can draw two separate objects simultaneously with each hand in a way unsplit brains find challenging. These experiments on split brain patients are deeply unsettling because they really point in the direction of a mute, separate intelligence, something living in the skull. You can even ask questions of a split brain and get disagreement on the answer. So if your brain is split, who is the you in this situation? From the outside, it's tempting to think of the part of the brain that's speaking as the person, but something is hearing and answering questions. And though right brain can't speak, it does understand faces, which left brain can't. If this is you, you don't know who your friends and family are in a crowd. This act of cutting exposes two minds in one head, and the talking mind doesn't know there's someone else in the house. The left brain can describe the situation it's in, but
The talking mind doesn't know there's someone in the house. I might disagree. I might say the talking mind keeps you, the third person perspective. Once you realize there's two parts to you, you become the third person observer of those two parts. And you go from being one person to three. You, the observer who recognizes that there's two different parts to yourself, creates a third perspective. My point is, the left talking brain doesn't know that the other half exists. I would say the left talking brain keeps you in the dark from the understanding that the other part exists. And I've said this before, the left brain will take credit. It's the one that you hear 95% of the time. And occasionally the other side will get a word in edgewise and the left brain will take credit and say, oh yeah, I did that, I said that. I've got empathy and creativity and intuition, of which it has none of those. There is a second half to yourself, and if you don't harness it, it will control you from behind the curtain. It does not want you to even know it exists. In order that it can control you without you knowing. Once you recognize its existence and that there is two voices in there, you are capable of taking control over yourself once again. But so long as you don't even know that other part even exists, it can control you from behind the curtain. That other part is this silent part that gets hijacked. Hijacked biobot transceivers. As I said, those who do not develop a relationship with God through the Holy Spirit will be hijacked by the new sheriff in town who does not respect your free will. And I said we would be coming to a point where development of that relationship will be nearly impossible because of the situation. It will leave you only with the ability to develop something like Stockholm Syndrome, because we're at the end of that road. And when you decide to develop a relationship with God through the Holy Spirit at the last minute, well, that's a little different. That's not even voluntary. That's more like Stockholm Syndrome, where you fall in love with your captor because you have no other alternatives. We're going to talk deeply about this.
Nonetheless, will constantly be surprised by right brain's actions and explain them away. There's a question to be asked here. Why, after separation, does right brain not totally freak out, but instead plays along helpfully, answering questions and listening to left brain's dumb stories about what's happening? It's the best pony? I don't know. Speculation time, but one answer is the cutting doesn't make right brain a separate intelligence, consciousness, person, but rather it has always been. In normal people, perhaps.
Right brain is spirit, intuition. It's where the still small voice within comes from that you have to listen to closely. And we're about to talk about the noisy one. I'll quit interrupting. This is about to get good, is all I'm saying.
Right brain grows up as a companion without a choice, feeling at first somewhat equal partners, but then as speech develops that it can't participate in, that increasingly becomes the central point of life, it resigns to mutely coordinate with left brain. At this moment in your normal head, there are two of you watching this video, one having a mind equals blown moment and the other mentally rolling its eye at the obviousness of it all. In split brains, right doesn't freak out because not a whole lot has really changed. You might not agree and may be arguing right now why it can't be possible. Exactly as we would expect talking left brain to do. Speculation aside, split brain patients show at the very least that in the mind there is a separate something that can hear and understand and respond given the right circumstances. Your brain isn't entirely yours. Who is you? You is two. But we can go deeper. You are many.
So now we're going to watch the first 5 minutes of a video that I made previously called Sun Tunnel Explained and Hive Mind, Parasites, and Consciousness Cell Division.
All we think there is one voice. I'm going to start that over because we just skipped to part 2 of this. At any given time, all we hear is one voice in our head. Depending on which side it is, we don't know. Until you can hear both and tell the difference. But until then, you think there's only one voice in your head. And the one that's talking all the time convinces you the other one doesn't exist. And that's how my ex-girlfriend Amber has it's like the split personality in Born Identity. But her split personality doesn't want her to know this.
In Born Identity, the movie with Matt Damon, they created like a CIA super soldier trained assassin who didn't even know that that's what he was. They would trigger that programming and that training and that knowledge of his assassin work when they needed him to be an assassin, and the rest of the time he'd go back to his day job and not even know what it was that he did.
Split personality even exists. That way it can operate from the background, behind the curtain, and you don't even know that it's controlling you. Because you don't think there's a second side to you. You think that all your thoughts are your own, and that everything you think are your thoughts. The truth is...
But when you get an emotional impulse to drive your truck at the new guy or shoot a gun or, as Matt did, take a swipe, we'll talk about that. When you get an emotional impulse to do something, it's from the right brain. And then the left brain is left holding the bag of responsibility to explain what you just did and why you just did it. And if you're unfamiliar with the right brain motivations, that which really motivates you to do what you do, you are at a loss, because the one reason for everything we do, think, or say is because we believe it will make us feel better to drive this truck at that motherfucker, to shoot my gun at you since you wouldn't listen to me and not cut my branches. I'm going to give you greater explanation about these examples that I'm using. But once you understand the concept, you can understand it all around you. And right now I have people saying that my family's strangely turning on me. Driven by emotional impulse from a side of themselves that they don't even know exists, that makes them hijacked biobot transceivers. Possessed. Very close to spiritual possession. Because a couple days ago when I mentioned to my dad that 10 seconds before you shot that gun at me, I clipped one of your branches and you said, no, don't cut that branch. I said, well, okay, this is suddenly your favorite branch now that I'm cutting it? Oh, never mind, go ahead, cut the branch. 10 seconds later, while I had cut 3 more branches, he shoots a gun at me, a BB gun. And when I was bringing this to his attention, it's like he didn't even know it happened. When I was explaining to him that branch that I cut 10 seconds earlier that you said not to, had something to do with you firing that BB gun at me, he was like, no. And you could see the wheels turning and the light going on in his head like he didn't even remember. And I said, okay, well, maybe I'm letting you in on something that you're unaware of here, but that branch that I cut 10 seconds before you shot at me had something to do with you shooting at me. And you could see it was news to him, and he could see the obviousness of what it was I was showing him, and therefore, demonic possession is real. And if you can't control yourself because there's part of you that you don't even know exists, how can you say, I'm sorry, I won't do it again? If you don't even know where it came from. In order to try to not do it again, you would have to access and harness that other side of you that motivates you to do the things you do. Otherwise, you have no choice in the matter.
There are 2 separate sides to you, and I've described this as 2 different collective consciousnesses vying for your individual consciousness, just like the Republican Party and the Democrat Party. There is the reptilian party and the insectilian party. One is a hive mind, and one liberates your individuality. Groups do not find God. Individuals find God. Remember these things as they go through this next segment.
There was only one voice, the voice of planet Earth. Everything that happened was in favor of the...
Remember that. There was only one voice, the voice of planet Earth, and James says Gaia is a dragon, and at the heart of your brain is the reptilian brain. Keep that in mind.
Growth of our planet. Organic life was flourishing.
And James True built all those dragons in the forest forest, and as he was producing those videos, I told you he was going to be advocating for the reptilians and a pro-dragon kind of guy until he came out, and I put it in one of my videos and said he absolutely is. And then the first time he showed us that he builds those dragon effigies in the forest. And then he was talking about getting together a campsite or whatever the thing was. He's like, we don't have to build dragons. I was just on a dragon kick for a while. You know, we can do whatever at the Camp Fest thing we're going to get together. But Gaia's a dragon, and he kind of choked and spit it out just like I just did. I was about to say Mother Earth or Mother Gaia or whatever they call it. That would be that emanating frequency from the Earth that he just spoke about, that was the spirit that connected to the biobot transceivers, and the emanating frequency
through the right brain, the intuition, the still small voice within,
of their natural state of being. And we'll listen to that again.
Returns us all to our natural condition, turns up the levels of the mind's inner vision. It plays to the space to where you are and regulates the beating of the broken hearts. With the help of vibration, through tone and rhythm, the human is forgiven and the soul gets back to living. Returns us all to our natural condition, turns up the levels of the mind's inner vision. These are lyrics from Take the Music, Jack Johnson, and I've explained that this explains how the muse works. This song right here is a song about how the muse works, how these muse messages come through the music and speak to you at a level that is not the same as the left brain with its loud mouth. It is the right brain, a still small voice within. Think of the snake charmer blowing his flute.
Gaia's a dragon, and he kind of choked and spit it out just like I just did. I was about to say Mother Earth or Mother Gaia or whatever they call it. That would be that emanating frequency from the Earth that he just spoke about, that was the spirit that connected to the biobot transceivers, and the emanating frequency of their natural state of being. And we'll listen to that again. So they injected the other frequency.
We are invaded on planetary level.
The insectoid
but sad
collective,
enough,
which is what's
also invaded in our consciousness.
That insectoid is a collective hive mind, and that is what is being exacerbated and extracted right now. And for some, they're being locked into it, and for others, they're being liberated from it. That is the separation of the two petri dishes you see right there. What Vanessa refers to as mitosis, a separation of two cells. They just showed you how the invasion happened, and then in the consciousness, some are liberated from it because the best way to get rid of a bad law is to strictly enforce it, and others are bound to it forever. And we're seeing that now in David Nino Rodriguez's video today. He says he's got to leave San Antonio, Texas, because even though the governor lifted the mandates, 95% of the businesses are still enforcing it. That is the collective hive mind of the insectillion.
In our mind, there was only one voice, the voice of planet Earth. Everything
Mother Gaia is a dragon.
Was in favor of the growth of our planet. Organic life was flourishing. But suddenly, another voice pops up in our head. Suddenly, we have duality, good and bad. An evil eye has woken up inside our head. The only purpose of that voice is to kill all organic life. Suddenly, we think of suicide.
That hive mind is not organic, it is silicon. As I spoke earlier in part 1 about the silicon life form dropping a tentacle at the Intel wafer plant where they create the silicon chips for the computers. Dropping a tentacle and expanding its way of life into the organic life that's here.
This relates really well to what James is talking about recently, saying when the switch gets flipped, and he was talking about Osiris's phallus and Isis, who created an artificial construct thereof, like reproduction, not through the natural, organic, good old-fashioned way, but through an artificial way, like a silicon-based life form would prefer.
A hive mind, collective, silicon-based life form.
Suddenly, we think of killing our neighbor for no reason at all. Now, we start destroying all life on our planet. The parasite is mimicking our internal voice and is pretending to be us. That way, it is hiding from our awareness. How do we get rid of this parasite? Let me tell you the story of Ramana Maharshi. In the
Before he goes about doing that, the reason I made this video in the first place is because he explains how the sun tunnel, which I filmed, is the access portal into this world for this other invading parasite. The basic premise of this presentation is that this insectilian race merged their world with our world by using the sun as a portal to connect the two. And when I filmed that sun tunnel opening and no less than 4 craft transiting through that sun tunnel, my channel got wiped. Keep that in mind. Okay, 1 minute of Carl Sagan.
Brain has evolved, increasing over millions of years in complexity and information content. Its structure reflects all the stages through which it has passed. The brain has evolved.
Watch the grin that comes over his face when he refers to our reptilian ancestors.
From the inside out. Deep inside is the oldest part, the so-called brain stem. It conducts many of the basic biological functions, including the rhythms of life, like heartbeat and respiration. The higher functions of the brain have evolved in 3 successive stages, according to a provocative insight by the American biologist Paul MacLean. You see, capping the brain stem is the so-called R complex, R for reptile. It's the seat of aggression, ritual, territoriality, and social hierarchies. It evolved to some hundreds of millions of years ago in our reptilian ancestors. So, deep inside our brain is something rather like the brain of a crocodile.
So like I said, this is going to raise a lot more questions than I have all the answers for. But in this video by Godgevel's stuff, I'm not sure how to pronounce his name, where he explains this insectilian invasion of our planet by another culture that gave us their mind. Just like David Icke says, the reptilians gave us their mind. Credo Mutua says that the reptilians gave us their mind. And we always associate the reptilian mind with the functions that are more like the left brain, which is, how do we say, cold-blooded, which means you have no emotion, right? You're heartless if you're cold-blooded. Maybe it's not that way at all. Maybe our emotionless side that's cold and calculated, like the analytical left brain, like a computer, is actually our insectilian mind, and the heart of who we are, the right brain, intuitive side, is actually your reptilian side.
We can kick for a while. You know, we can do whatever at the Camp Fest thing we're gonna get together. But Gaia's a dragon, and he kind of choked and spit it out just like I just did. I was about to say Mother Earth or Mother Gaia or whatever they call it. That would be that emanating frequency.
By the way, this isn't the first time I've said that. In some of my previous videos, like when I was going to Missouri, I said maybe it is they who have the bigger hearts and we who are cold-blooded.
from the earth that he just spoke about, that was the spirit that connected to the biobot transceivers and the emanating frequency of their natural state of being. And we'll listen to that again.
So the original emanating frequency from the earth that connected to the humans was from Mother Gaia, which James says is a dragon. And the song, Take the Music, talks about how it returns us all to our natural condition and turns up the levels of the mind's inner vision. So the right brain has, it's almost like getting around the algorithm these days where you have to use different code, like analogies and metaphors, because the computer can't really understand humor, analogies, metaphor, intuition, that type of thing, stuff that the right brain is capable of being creative enough and intuitive enough to know what it is you're talking about when you imply something rather than saying it explicitly in order to get around the algorithm of the computer. Likewise, your right brain was connected to nature, intuition, the still small voice within. And that is why these muse messages communicate to you through that right brain, through the spirit, the emotional side, the heart center, to get around the algorithm of the left brain, to circumvent the parasitic overlay on top of our psyche that has been imposed upon us, that God Gevelstoff calls the noisy one, the one that's talking all the time, that one voice in your head that you hear all the time that's always talking. That's not the right brain, still small voice within intuitive center that was connected to our natural condition, emanating from the frequencies of the earth. Is this making any sense? I hope so. This is just laying the foundation for future conversations so we can flesh these ideas out a little better.
So they injected the other frequency.
We are invaded on planetary level.
The insectoid
But sad
collective,
enough,
which is
are
what's
also invaded in our consciousness.
that insectoid is a collective hive mind, and that is what is being exacerbated and extracted right now. And for some, they're being locked into it, and for others, they're being liberated from it. That is the separation of the two petri dishes you see right there. What Vanessa refers to as mitosis, a separation of two cells.
And those that have not come to know that other half of their self, when their spiritual switches are flipped on, they have been hijacked by malevolent beings who communicate to you through that right brain spiritual center, that give you the impulses to shoot at somebody or drive your truck at them. And because you've never become familiar with that other part of yourself and you don't even know it exists, you're a slave to it. And unless you, how's it? I'm gonna make a deal with the bad wolf so the bad wolf don't bite no more. That's a song by AWOLNATION. It's referring to the good wolf and the bad wolf inside of you. Which will you feed? The angel on one shoulder, the devil on the other. And people who aren't connected to their right brain, intuition, still small voice within, are receiving impulse